All right, here's a little walkthrough on lesson number 16, collision detection. And we've done some work with this already. This gets into the IsTouching block that we worked with on Friday. Part 1 is an introduction. Look at it as much as you want to. Part number 2 is, this is kind of a run the program, look at the code that's involved, or think about the code that's involved. There's nothing for you to do here, but you notice if the frog touches the mushroom, then the mushroom reacts, right? We kind of talked about that on Friday. If one thing is touching another, you can make events happen. That's what they're wanting you to think about here. Part number 3. Look at if you'll look over at and I'm going to shrink this out a little bit here and pull this up. If you'll look at the part that's in yellow over here on the right-hand side in the workspace, this is the actual code that would be involved in trying to check to see if one object is touching another. This is the code that would be required to detect if they are close enough and if they're touching. And that's extremely complicated. Nobody wants to do that. I don't want to do that. Nobody wants to do that. So what their point here is that all of this coding that's going on here has kind of been set up for you in the IsTouching block. So the IsTouching block makes everything so much easier because you don't really have to code out all of these relationships that you see in yellow right here. All right, so now you get to work a little bit on part number 4. You run this program and there's a pin and a balloon. And they want to say, okay, let's see if the balloon is touching the tack, right? Or if, so inside the draw loop, you have to bring over the IsTouching block. If I switch back to the version history here, you'll see what I'm talking about. The inside the draw loop, the if block right here has a hole, a gap. And so you're going to need to bring over the IsTouching and check to see, is the pin touching the balloon? And if it is, then there's something that's going to happen, and you'll see what happens as you go through it. Number 5, part number 5. Again, similar thing here. You're going to have, there's an if command down here in the draw loop that has to do with this apple that falls down. Mine's already done, so you're going to have to do yours. But this apple falls down and it hits the blender, right? So you're going to have to set up this IsTouching situation here. It's on the if block. You'll have to do is if apple is touching blender. And then read the directions here and see what it is you're supposed to do. All right, part 6. Let's move on. This one gets into adding some sound on that blender thing that you just did. Now the one thing I want to show you here is if you're going to add the sound, it would go inside the if block here. If the apple is touching the blender, you got the blender shaking, and if you took the challenge from the last level, you've made the apple disappear. But if you want to make this sound play, what you're going to have to actually do is right up here in the instructions, there is like an address for the sound. You're going to have to right click it, and you're going to have to copy this link address. And then when you use the play sound thing here, you'll have to paste it. You'd have to paste it in there and make it play, right? But the thing I wanted to show you is that you have to actually copy this link that they have up in the instructions right there. All right, that's on part 6. On part 7, I'm going to hit a start over here real quick, and on part 7, when you run it, there's this rainbow that slides across, and there's a horse standing there. And so the task is, if you read the directions, it says when the rainbow touches the unicorn, or I'm sorry, touches the horse, let's turn it into a unicorn. And the unicorn animation is already loaded up for you. You don't have to worry about, I guess you could go get one of your own if you want, but it's already loaded up for you in the animation tab. So it's really just a matter of adding in an IsTouching block. I'll restore my version here. And then when the rainbow comes, that's what it should look like. It's good to know when you're right, when you're on target. The rainbow comes sliding up when it touches the horse turns into a unicorn. Yay, that's what we're shooting for on part number 7. Part number 8, the thing that you're going to run into here is this debug block. And what it does is show you kind of a frame around your objects, and I'll run this so you can see it. You see the balloon and the pin, they have this frame around them. And those frames kind of determine, it's like a boundary around the object. And like if this frame touches that frame, that's going to be counted as an IsTouching. So these frames determine when they're actually touching. Right, so it would be possible for the pin to come along, and if it comes down here to the corner of the balloon, the pin's not really quite touching the balloon, but as far as the computer is concerned, it's close enough. If those boundaries come in contact with each other, then it thinks that they are touching. So you'll be turning some of the debug things from false to true, and then just seeing what they do. And that's related here on part number 9. No, I'm sorry, on part 8. When you do yours, if you run it on part 8, you'll see the boundary around the balloon is really big. And I'm going to give you a little hint here. Down here it says challenge, can you use the animations tab to resize the balloon so it does a better job of popping at the right time. Here's a little hint, a little heads up. Probably the easiest way to do that is go to the animation tab, select the balloon picture, and crop it, because you'll find there's a lot of extra space around the balloon. So if you just go over here and crop it, then that takes away a lot of the extra space and makes it work a little bit better. All right, part 9 is going to be this bunny thing. And the thing that you need to kind of look at on the bunny is it says do 3 things. Use the counter pattern on the score variable. Well, we haven't talked about scoreboards and score variables a whole lot. We're going to do more with that very soon. But if you look at the animation that's happening here, there is a scoreboard in the top left-hand corner. And if you look at the code on line number 8, there is a variable that's set for score equals 0. All right, so they're saying down here, if we go find our comment down here, when bunny touches carrot. So you'll have to kind of build this, right? You'll have to say if, and we're going to go to IsTouching, and it's going to be bunny is touching carrot. And then there's some things we want to have happen. And this keeping score looks like this. I'll just bring over an x equals, and we're going to do more with this very soon. I'm going to say score equals score plus 1. And heads up, we're going to do a lot of that, and I have an assignment coming up where you're going to really work with that idea of keeping track of scores and things like that. So that's going to up the score if the bunny touches the carrot. The other thing that we could do would be make the carrot go back over to the left or to the right hand side. So that could be code.org is not keeping up with me here. Carrot.x, and I'm going to put it over like at 430. And then you could also do this. You could make the .y so that the carrot, and you can kind of see it happening right now. But if the bunny touches the carrot, we could make it for its y location. We could make that random. I might say carrot.y equals a random number. And I might set that anywhere from 5 to 380 or so, which is most of the screen. All right, so if I reset that and I run it, and the bunny touches a carrot, a couple of things that you'll notice: I get a point for one, and as soon as I touch the carrot, it kind of disappears, resets back over to the right-hand side of the screen. So I'm getting points, and the carrots are at random heights. That's why the random number on the Y location. And every time I touch a carrot, I get a point on the scoreboard. And that's all done with this if block that you're looking at right here. All right, that's part 9. Part 10 brings back our friend the frog, right? And this is the jumping frog that we made in the previous lesson, in lesson 15. And so the things that you do is you check to see, is the frog touching the mushroom? And then what the directions ask you to do is, well, make a couple of things happen if they are. And the challenge is to add a scoreboard up at the top. Now on mine, if you're watching mine, I made it so it made more sense to me to try and have the frog avoid mushrooms rather than touch them, because if the frog's just supposed to touch them, he could just stand there. So I'm trying to have the frog. You don't get a point on mine unless the frog manages to avoid the mushroom, unless he jumps over it. Then you get a point. So that's how I set mine up. But I also made it so that if the frog touches the mushroom resets, and I don't know if you can hear it on the movie, but there's a little sound effect that happens as well. And all of that is coded in, let me see, it's coded in right down here. If frog is touching mushroom. Now my score is going up if the mushroom makes it over to the left-hand side. All right, so that's how I did mine. Right, and then you're at the very end of it. It's just a summary screen on collision detection, and so then you're done.